Good afternoon, everyone. Where's the sun gone? It was beautiful, wasn't it, for a few days, and then along comes the wonderful British weather. Anyway, I refuse to be down today because today's my birthday, and I'm very happy about that. So I do like birthdays, and I like all the attention. Anyway, welcome to this mental health webinar. We can see the participants numbers are going up. So we'll just, I'll do the housekeeping part. So today we're discussing emotion and mental health understanding the power within with Deryn Cole. We've been working with Deryn for about a year now. Is it, Vicky? I think, yeah.
2 years.
Is it 2 years? Is it 2 years?
Yeah. Happy anniversary.
How
three. Happy anniversary.
Oh, 3. Oh, blimey. It's how time flies, eh? Oh, I didn't realize it was that long. Anyway, and so Deryn's going to come on in a minute. Housekeeping is we've got closed captions for anybody who needs them today. You can just find them in the Zoom bar at the bottom there. You can put them on. Please put your questions in the Q&A area of the webinar, or you can put them in the chat, wherever you're comfortable to do that, and we will get to them hopefully during the webinar, but if not, then there'll be 10 minutes at the end to do that. Please keep everything polite and nice and respectful. Just to introduce people now, we'll hand over to Vicky. She'll introduce herself. Who are you, Vicky?
Who am I? That's a very good question. Discovering that every day. I'm Vicky Barclay. I work for Microlink PC. I'm one of the senior operational leads. So if you are one of our clients, I can see some of you in there. Hello, you know my face just a little bit too well.
And then we're going to hand over to Deryn Cole. Hello, Deryn.
Hi, Anna. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I do love birthdays. I can't lie.
Hi, Vicky, and hi to everybody who's joined us today. And a big warm hello and welcome to this webinar. I truly hope that you can take something from this today and that it will benefit your life and enlighten your path. I'd like to start with a quote from the great psychologist Carl Jung, who inspired me on my path. He said, "I'm not what happened to me, I'm what I choose to become." So a very brief background. My name's Deryn Cole. I'm 63. I'm a mother of 3. My genetics are Native American and Celtic, and I'm an insatiably curious person by nature. My background is studying humanistic, psychodynamic, and integrated counseling, and I have a passion for the shadow self, which is the unconscious aspect of us, which was created in our childhood. I'll share a little bit of my childhood, as that's what eventually led me into this field. My mother was a B-list celebrity, my father a pioneer in modern jewelry. I loved them dearly, however, they both had a substantial shadow self, and because of that, were not able to acknowledge and be present for me when I was developing, so I had no validation, acknowledgement, or support when I was upset. Later, I understand that I developed a shadow self myself, and that we inherit this from our parents. And we either inherit their shadow or we reverse it. One day I happened upon the work of Carl Jung, who had a huge impact on me and led me on the path of focusing primarily on shadow work. In my humble opinion, I believe the shadow is responsible for all our mental health problems, but I will leave it to you to consider if that opinion resonates with you by the end of this webinar. Okay, so that's my introduction.
Yeah, so now we're going to delve into the work that Deryn does, and it's quite fascinating. And both Vicky and I have been on a journey with Deryn, as have about 13 of our other colleagues inside the organization, and it has been nothing short of amazing how much Deryn's work has, I think, just highlighted what had never occurred to us. I don't know, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, it never occurred to me to even look at this, think like this, and use it, and how to use it, because it just you know, it just helps. It just helps. You take yourself with you wherever you go. And that's including in relationships. That's, you know, with people you live with. And also, of course, at work, because we spend half our time at work. So you can't get on with everybody, but actually with Deryn's work, you can, because you understand where everything comes from. So that's what I'm hoping today, you know, you're going to get from this. We are pioneers. Michael Inc. pioneers with this. We love what Deryn's doing. It has made a huge change to the organization, and Vicky will share her story as a senior line manager. And Deryn will tell you where this all comes from. And then we'll be sharing resources afterwards, so you can get in touch and learn more about her work. But anyway, I will ask the first question. How is the shadow formed, Deryn? You talk about this shadow that we all have.
Right.
What is it, and how is it formed?
Okay. So before we get into the psychological aspects, I'd like to explain the biological aspect first. So we have one brain and three minds within our brain. One is the neocortex, which houses our authentic self and rational thinking. One is the amygdala that controls our emotions and sits between the authentic self and the reptilian brain that houses our fight or flight responses and our shadow self. It's my understanding that parts of our authentic self were broken off in childhood and stored in the reptilian brain, in the shadow self. What we are doing in our work is that we're returning the broken off parts of the authentic self, and we do this by acknowledging our feelings, tracking the thought, tracking the belief, and dismantling the belief. And to my clients listening today, they will know that I say this over and over again. This is a process, because we have to unlearn first of all and then relearn. So it's not just a matter of just learning something. You have to actually unlearn what you've learned, which is the difficulty and why it's such a process. And I must also express that this topic is not linear. It's a process in understanding the work. It normally takes a good few months to get your head around it, and sometimes even longer. If you'd like me to elaborate on anything, please don't be shy in coming forward, and I'll do my best to clarify that. As humans, we've been processing life from a standpoint that does not generally take into consideration that our thoughts and feelings are connected. That in itself takes a while to understand. We've been primed as thinkers and doers, but I challenge that. The things we love best in life are the things that revolve around love. The love of one another, family, partner, children, friends, our pets, our hobbies. And if we are beings of love, then we must understand our feelings better, as there's no education in any form whatsoever about how to manage our feelings. If you like, we're going from human 1.0 to human 2.0. So be patient with yourself and me, because it's quite revolutionary. Okay, let's get into it. As children, we've not developed thinking as we are imagining. We are in the brainwave of theta when we're children, which is a dream state, and we do not reach critical thinking until after the age of 7. And I think then, if I'm correct, we advance into alpha, beta, and if we're masters at this, into gamma. When we're children, we have negative experiences, scary events, not being acknowledged, feeling criticized, feeling rejected, feeling unheard, having injustice, my brothers and sisters and what have you. And it chips away at our self-esteem. And because we do not understand the situation in its entirety, because how can we, because we're so young, we feel it reflected on who we are. We feel negative beliefs around the area, and part of our authentic self disconnects and is shelved into the shadow self. An example of this might be that we cried because our toy was broken, or our caregiver might not have comforted us and said something like, oh, come on, it's just a toy. We can get another one. Here, the child's feelings are not acknowledged. It's not about the toy. It's about how they felt sentimental about the toy and their loss of it. Their feelings are not acknowledged. And then they believe that they don't matter, that their feelings don't matter. And then throughout their life, they would come to dismiss their feelings and put other people's feelings before theirs. Of course, this would have to happen on a repeated cycle for the belief to establish in the reptilian brain, which houses the shadow. Another example might be that we were too noisy for our quiet parents, and they might have frowned upon us when we were exuberant, which in turn would chip away at our confidence, our self-esteem, and repress or invert our natural and authentic part of us that was confident and repressed. And the repressed side would go into the shadow. A classic example of shadow might be when our boss says they want to see us later. It seems most people I speak to have anxiety when they hear that. And the inner child is probably remembering when they were younger and getting into trouble and projecting that onto their boss. Our inner child always remains with us. We incorporate the critical parent and wounded child within our shadow, and we can fluctuate between these two shadow identities depending on who we're interacting with. Everyone has a shadow, and the parts of us that are in our shadow trigger other people's shadow and vice versa. And because of the child has got a wild imagination, and because of the anxiety, the shadow always presumes the worst possible scenario and catastrophizes everything. So if you find yourself doing this, it's a surefire way of knowing that you're in your shadow. The shadow is formed by a repetition of events. The more we believe something to be true, the faster our neurons connect, form a synapses, which is indeed a belief. Once a belief is formed, then thoughts come from the belief. Through the work we do, we acknowledge the feelings, track the thought back, then track the thought back to the belief. We must always remember that we are in our shadow mind. Whenever we are in our shadow mind, we are in our child mode. And when others are in that mode, we are witnessing them reacting as a child. So, we can think that people are being childish, and that's because we're observing that person in their shadow self. So people tend to form into two categories of emotions, one being avoidant of emotion and overwhelmed when others are emotional, and others may feel anxious or looking and needing validation for their self-esteem. So that gives you a sort of a rough idea of how the shadow is formed. Does that make sense to you? Are there any questions on that?
It does to me, yeah. We did have a question in the chat, which was just to recap over the three different states of mind, which is the reptilian, the limbic, and the neocortex,
Right.
and how these three operate. But I find it quite interesting, which I have answered in the question, but we can go into more detail a little bit later. But I find it fascinating that what you're saying is whatever happens to us before the age of 7, be that serious or not, or abuse, or it could be just a really minute thing that
Right.
happened, but it could absolutely affect our mental health later on in our lives. And of
Right.
course, not having done any work on identifying that, because we go to school and then we're just thrust into relationships and we have to get on with people, and we don't know that inner damage or that inner thing that's causing us to be oversensitive or to react to things in different ways, and that's all formed before the age of 7.
Right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's all formed there, and the only way that we can get in contact with that is by being present in this moment and noticing how we feel. So if we're feeling good, we're in our authentic self. That part of us hasn't had a negative experience. What we're looking for is when we're feeling bad, when we're feeling guilty or frightened or scared or negative in any way.
And it's those intrusive thoughts, isn't it?
Those are the intrusive thoughts from the shadow. So they say our thoughts are rational and our feelings are irrational. But I'll challenge that point. Our conscious thoughts are rational. So I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go and get petrol. That's a rational thought. But we have an irrational thought that will come from the shadow. So we have rational and irrational thoughts. And the irrational thought, if I go there, that person won't talk to me and I shouldn't go there because they might be horrible. And you just don't know that. It's imagination. So it's a child because the child was always in this state of imagination. So you can challenge that. The very fact that we're feeling bad shows us that that's part of our shadow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. So basically, bad feelings are shadow, good feelings are authentic self.
Right. And different you know, for you, for me, for Vicky, for everyone, different parts of different things will trigger us. What I'm triggered by, you may not be triggered by. And for Vicky as well. We're not all triggered by the same things.
No, of course, because we haven't all had the same experience as a child. And of course, we've got these parents. I used to say this to Azadeh a lot. My colleague Azadeh, who runs the webinars with me, she's in the background there doing all the magic stuff. And I used to say, you know, if you've got great parents or great caregivers that have brought you up, you are so lucky, because most of us, you know, these dynamics of our parents, that we can't choose them, we just have to, you know, live with them, can do lots of well, it's not genetic, what's the word, it's generational.
It's inherited. It's what we call the silent inheritance.
Oh yes, that fabulous phrase, the silent inheritance.
So
Imagine that.
there's financial inheritance that we have, but there's the silent inheritance of the shadow. And
So
when we look at that, when we look at our parents and what they reacted to, my mother, for example, had huge anxiety, which I dealt with for years. Great fear of where I was, and I wasn't able to get hold of you, and where were you? And I was so worried. When I realized I was doing that with my daughter, when my daughter grew up, I was also doing that. And I recognized that within my shadow, that I was repeating that cycle. And I got to the point I thought, well, rationally, she's either okay or she's not okay. And if she's not okay, then we'll deal with that. And if and also, what was the most likely scenario? The most likely scenario, if I couldn't get a hold of her, was that there was no signal, etc. She was busy. And so it's challenging that irrational, imaginative thought that the child has in the shadow self. It's actually challenging that and being much more rational with it. It's the rational mind that we need to use, which is sort of left hemisphere, whereas the child is more right hemisphere. The right hemisphere of our brain is much more imaginative and creative, and the left hemisphere is much more logical. So it's using both parts of those brains to decipher a scenario.
Yeah, I can definitely identify with that, because you know, I have stepchildren and one daughter of my own, and you know, they go out in their cars and they go out and actually I don't do what my mum used to do, because she had 4 daughters and we were always on a very tight leash. You know, where are you, where are you going, don't believe you, you know, all that usual stuff, the fear. But I don't do that with my daughter. All I ask for is a heart to just let me know now and again she's okay, because I'm not imagining the worst. I just want to know she's all right. So I have identified that, you know, that fear from my mum, and I have tried to correct it now.
Yeah. But it's acknowledging that, it's seeing that fear is within us, and then it's our imagination that's running away with itself.
Yes.
And that's our shadow, and that's the child within us imagining the worst. So it's noticing that, reassuring your child, coming back in and saying, the most likely scenario, being absolutely rational with the most likely scenario is that they're just busy, or their phones run out of battery, or they're just in a place with no signal. Being rational about it and not being emotional about it.
And it's the same when the boss says, oh, I'd like to have a chat. Having that irrational fear, you know, if you have been brought up in a fearful environment, that, oh God, I've done something wrong.
Yeah, and your dad's
going to want to talk to me about, you know,
I'll speak to you later about it. So we have that, you know, even at school, you know, the headmaster or your teacher wants to see you, or your headmaster wants to see you, and you have that anxiety. Then we're just projecting that. We're projecting that all our life onto everybody else. And because you're always projecting the worst possible scenario, you're always catastrophizing everything. So it's bringing that back into your rational mind and really, you know, stepping out of the emotional aspect, because the shadow is so emotional. But we have these 2 hemispheres, as I said earlier. We have our left brain, which is rational, and we have our right brain, which is creative and intuitive. And it's important to use both. It's important to harness both.
A lot to unpack there, huh?
There's a lot.
Well, yeah, we're not going to get through all your work in this 1 hour, but I think what it's done for me is just to pause, and it took me a while to be able to pause, because and not just knee-jerk react to whatever was being said to me, or whatever was triggering me, or whatever was irritating me, or whatever negative emotion I was having in the time. And I now, rather than react, I pause and I think, okay, where's that coming from, and why is that being shown to me?
Right.
So I think that's really, really important, and because I'm quite a impulsive person.
And that's part of the work, as Vicky knows, it's actually remaining here now in this moment and not jumping ahead, and not have this knee-jerk reaction that the shadow wants you to have, to get angry or to get frightened or to hit back.
So much better when I don't, because actually what happens is, when I don't do that knee-jerk reaction, the situation just diffuses and goes away.
Yeah, I find the same. Yeah, exactly. And it's actually when you take that minute to think, how does that make you feel? That's how you start uncovering the issues. Like, that's when you realize, does that make me feel good? No. Why? That's when you start thinking, actually, yeah, why does that make me feel bad? And that's when you start kind of unpacking the issues as well. And it makes you feel so much better afterwards because you understand.
Right. And when you react, you always regret it.
Yeah.
What is that expression? Something in haste, repent at leisure, or something. There's
Yes.
something like
I think it's marry in haste, repent at leisure, but
that.
I think that's what it is, actually, that
You
famous
change
saying.
it to react in haste, repent at leisure. Because often when we do react, we're reacting from our shadow, which is our negative side. And then afterwards we'll feel guilt and remorse and regret.
Mm.
We don't observe that. We just carry on in the same patterns. Often, that's what I observe, that people are just reacting the same way again and again and again, and don't stop and rationalize. Hang on, I always react like this, and I always get that negative response. So if we say we were cooking something, and and if we left it there for too long, it might boil over. So you learn externally, in the external world, you learn not to do things wrong. After a time of making mistakes, you'll think, okay, that's not the right way to do it. I'll do it this way. But it seems, from my observation, that we don't learn emotionally. We keep repeating the same mistakes, and that's because we don't understand about the shadow. We don't understand about our emotions.
And they don't teach this stuff in school, do they?
They don't. There's no knowledge around it at all. There's no education, and it feels like we're taught that we're thinkers and doers. And Descartes said, the German philosopher said, "I think, therefore I am." But maybe we can say, "I feel, therefore I am," because our consciousness is not just thinking, but it's also feeling. We're not just doers and thinkers, primarily feelers. Everything that we do is to feel good. We don't. Everything that we do, there's nothing that we do that isn't for any other incentive other than to feel better. We go to work to pay our bills so that we're comfortable and secure. We see our friends to have fun. We see our families. We have pets because we like loving them, and we love the love that's returned. We go on holidays to have fun. Everything that we do as humans is to feel good.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's fundamentally who we are, is that we're feelers, we're of the heart. And that's not taken into consideration. We're not taught that in any way. We're taught to think and do.
and especially not between male and female.
Right.
Women are very good at expressing, discussing, sharing. We're emotional creatures, and men are taught something totally different. You mustn't show your emotions, you mustn't show your feelings, you must be detached.
That's right, Anne. So fortunately, culturally, men are taught that it's not good, it's not cool to show your feelings. And so as little boys, their feelings are dismissed. That's something that women do. Men don't do that. Because their emotions are shut down so much, then they shut down from their emotions and are guided to just be thinkers and doers. And then, of course, they get married or have relationships with women who, it's okay to have our emotions, it's okay to have our feelings, but we don't really understand what they're for. And as women, we tend to be nurturers and also get our validation, unfortunately, from men and from other people, and we tend to be the carers of people's emotions. So generally, I'm talking generally, but not exclusively, women tend to want everybody else to feel good in order so that they can feel good. And if other people aren't feeling good, they feel uncomfortable. They need everyone else to be. But what I guide the clients to do is that you're not responsible for other people's feelings. You're only responsible for your own feelings, and you're only responsible to validate yourself. Take your need to be validated from other people away and put it upon yourself to validate yourself. Put it upon yourself to notice the good within yourself. Notice how much you've overcome in your life, because the shadow is always making us notice what we're not, what we haven't done. It's because the shadow dwells on low self-esteem. That's the very foundation of it. The authentic self is good self-esteem. So for a lot of women, but again, not exclusively women, can be some men, but generally it's women, we're looking for validation. So we're acknowledged. And then if men are, so we're generally, it's called an anxious attachment. And generally when men are avoidant of that, avoidant of emotions because they can't connect with their own, they'll become avoidant attachment. That is the basis of a lot of relationship problems.
Yeah, and what I also notice is that women, so if men are shut down with their emotions and mustn't show things and, you know, avoidant, and women sometimes just let their emotions, you know, what's the word? They're rampantly out there, you know. That's why men are saying, oh, you know, calm down, you're so emotional, you're over the top, you know, you're overreacting. I mean, but quite possibly we are, because we've never been also taught to manage our feelings, and men have never been taught to express their feelings.
Right,
So
so
if we kind of, you know, kind of come in the middle somewhere and understand all this feeling stuff, then we can possibly actually be able to communicate really well.
That's right. So when we can educate men that it's okay to have your feelings, that they're safe, they're not an irrational, crazy thing, that all they are is a tool to guide you to your emotional guidance system. They're a guide to telling you whether you're in your shadow self or your authentic self. Because the way that the authentic self communicates is through feelings, and the way that the shadow self communicates is through intrusive thoughts. So feelings are actually your guide to tell you which state of mind you're in. So that's what men really need to understand, is that it's a practical, logical, useful tool. And it's not some crazy wacky thing that women do. Women, on the other hand, need to understand that they need to control their emotions, and that they can control their emotions. And what feelings are for is for them to validate themselves and not expect other people to validate them. Because for a lot of females, we look to men to validate us.
It's all very interesting work. We've just had a question from Elena, and she says, how can we get to learn and understand our shadow?
By being very present, by slowing down, by meditation. But the word meditation is such a huge subject. It took me years to really understand what it means. And all meditation really means is that you sit in the present and you observe how you feel. You don't have to do all these, there's lots of techniques for it, and they're all very good, but the basis of it is that you sit, turn off all your technology, turn off all the external input, and just sit with yourself. It's one of the hardest things I ask my clients to do. And most people find it really hard because the shadow is so intrusive.
Yeah, Elena's actually said, she said, tried and done all these, but not much helped. Slowing down is something that not many women have in their DNA. I do agree with you there. I also found, I mean, meditation really, really tricky. It would just wind me up and irritate me, you know, having to sit still.
It's about training the mind to be present. So again, this is a process, and slowly being in touch with where you are right now.
Yeah.
That's a work in itself.
Yeah,
So
and it doesn't come overnight, does it?
No,
It's a practice. It's like a
doesn't-
golf swing. You got to
Because-
keep doing it.
releasing yourself from your shadow, and you're breaking a really bad habit, if you like. So the more you can stay present and see how am I doing right this minute now? What am I feeling right now?
Mm.
And then if you can feel that, okay, I feel some anxiety. Now we need to connect the feeling to the thought. What am I actually anxious about? So recognizing that, okay, I'm a little bit anxious about my parents arriving tomorrow. Okay, then what are you anxious about? Oh, well, they might judge me, that the house is this or I'm that. Okay, so now you understand you might feel judged. So then you're understanding, when you understand that it's judgment, then you can also understand that's being invalidated by other people. So a lot of this book is about validating and invalidating, because the basis of the work is self-esteem. So then when you remember that other people can't invalidate you or validate you, only you can do that yourself. When you remember that, you can come back into a sense of calm.
Mm. I want to hear a little bit actually from Vicky and how she's been working as a manager and how it's affected, good or bad, Vicky, in your
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I mean, I've been working with Deryn for over a year now. So personally and professionally, a lot of the work that obviously I do is within microlink. So, we do practice what we preach, funnily enough. So the support that we offer to our clients is also offered to ourselves, which is good. For
We're
me,
lucky.
yeah, we are. So for me, a lot of the work had to come from understanding myself first, as a person and understanding. I'm a bit like you, Anna. I mean, it took me a very long time to be able to pause every 10 minutes and actually go, how am I feeling? How is that making me feel? But on a professional level, it's helped me understand not just myself, but my team and how I work as well. So, Darren's been working with me like, actually, I'm like my mum when I'm at home, but I'm like my dad when I'm in the office. So it's actually working on very different triggers and very different sides. Yeah. I'd love to say I'm the only one, but no, there's two
Oh,
right
it's
here.
also
So,
me. Yeah. Cool.
but everyone in my team's very different as well. Everyone's shadow is different. And, I have a team of highly neurodiverse as well, which doesn't change the way that I manage, and it doesn't change the way that people's shadows are as well. So for me, one of the main things that I've been working on with Deryn as well is reacting to other people's shadows, which is actually a really interesting thing. So, how sometimes some people can walk into a room and they can tell how people are feeling just from the aura in the room and the feeling in the room.
The energy.
But that's actually your shadow trying to talk to you. That's your feelings trying to talk to you. Like, why does that person make me feel that way? And, the work that I've been doing with Deryn helps me identify when other people are in their shadow and actually how to say to them, you're in your shadow, like what's up? Like my team are very, very open with each other. I mean, we're very light-hearted about it. I'll say that's not very here and now of you. But that snaps them out of it. And it makes us really coherent as a team because yes, we need to work better, but we also need to understand each other because we spend 8 hours a day together. But even just professing about Darren's work a little bit, I've got a member of my team who came in at the start and they were very much in their shadow. They were having days off sick and we couldn't find like a reason why. And it's only since they've been working with Deryn, they haven't had a day off sick in 3 months. That in itself speaks wonders. But that didn't happen overnight. That happened over a month of working with Deryn and actually clicking as well. And that person is neurodiverse. So it's not just the work doesn't apply to neurotypicals, as it were. It applies to everyone.
I think if Deryn can go on in a minute when we go back to her and explain, because I have actually had a question, which is from someone who has a neurodiverse condition, and it says, for those with neurodiversities who might find the processing of emotion very different to neurotypical people, would you say there are any significant differences, or is it just sort of relative to everyone? So that's quite interesting because, yeah, emotions don't always come to me. I've got ADHD, and I don't always process like jokes and humor or those little idiosyncrasies or nuances of someone's facial expression. So I might just say something and not realize I've cut them to the core, because for me, well, I didn't feel it. So, and I wouldn't hurt anybody consciously ever, but it just comes out of my mouth, and then I'm like backtracking. Oh, I'm so sorry. When when I've suddenly dawned on me, oh, they've reacted like that, and I've really upset them. And so yeah, it
But again,
it
do you not
this
feel that
work.
that's someone's shadow reacting to that rather than actually what you're doing? Because you're only in control of what you say, which is what Deryn's saying there. That could be someone's shadow. I don't know. Deryn will probably tell us everything now.
Well, it's back to that present thing again. It's where it's being so conscious that when you're snapping at someone, when you're going at someone, when you're irritated by an email or a tone of the email that you are imagining that there was a tone, because I do this sometimes with my daughter, with my stepchildren. They read something, oh look, I got a text from so and so or a Snapchat from so and then I read it in a funny voice. I do it with an Australian voice, or I do it with a French, but all I do is a French voice, and then they end up laughing because it depends how you hear it in your head. Is it really meant like that? Or is it just, I can sound very abrupt when I text. Doesn't mean I'm thinking abruptly. I'm not thinking anything bad. I'm just busy and I'm blah, out, offended, the person it's gone to. Sorry. But anyway, let's go back to Deryn, because we've,
Yeah, so the shadow self will interpret things. So if you're in your shadow mind, you will interpret things for the worst.
Okay.
Which is always knocking our self-esteem. So it's how we interpret things. And it's being conscious of that. It's being conscious of how we're interpreting it. So what was the question that the lady asked?
How, someone with a neurodiverse condition, how does the work, is it different for someone with a neurodiverse condition who doesn't process emotion the same way as a neurotypical, or is it relative to everyone? So are there differences, or is it the same for everyone?
I don't treat anybody differently. I feel that we're all the same, and different aspects of us are not connected to our emotions. What I found with the neurodiverse people is that they really have a great imagination. And the work that I've done with some of the clients who are neurodiverse is to help them to notice their imagination and their intrusive thoughts. So they really come around to understanding their intrusive thoughts, and their imagination is creating these really negative emotions within themselves. They actually seem to excel at it. And what I'm starting to understand is sometimes they excel at it faster than neurotypical people. And I tell them it's their superpower, especially one client. And she has really excelled at that, understanding that those thoughts are her imagination, and they're not facts. And it's challenging that, because when it comes into our head, it feels like a fact. That thought comes into my head, it feels like a fact. And often when people talk to me, they'll say, it's funny because now that I'm saying this out loud to you, it sounds ridiculous. But when I'm actually thinking it myself within my own mind, it seems so real and true. To actually talk, that's why counseling is quite good, very good. It's because when you share it with somebody else, you realize it's irrational. So I've seen great progress with neurodiverse people. They are actually able to understand that, are actually able to identify their emotions. They seem to be so overwhelmed by the thoughts that they're not in touch with their feelings. But once you help people understand that thoughts and emotions are one, that you cannot have a thought without having an emotion.
Can't have a thought without an emotion.
It's impossible. Just try thinking about somebody losing their hamster, like a child losing their hamster. You know, you'll have a feeling about how that child might feel, or an elderly person crossing the road in heavy traffic. How would that person be feeling? You can't have a thought without an emotion. Some people are more in touch with their emotions, but don't understand what the intrusive thoughts are. So we'll help them track the thought. But for some people, they're more in touch with their thoughts and not in touch with their emotions. And who tend to be more neurodiverse people, I'll help them track the emotion. So when you can see that, that's a real fundamental change for clients.
Oh, yeah, Maggie has asked a question. How do you find that balance between acting with rationality, but also demonstrate and teach empathy?
Mm.
That's a tricky one, huh?
Well, is that
Well,
empathy?
not with your work, it isn't.
Mm.
But that's actually what I've been working with Deryn with as well, because, you know, as a manager in the workplace, you know, how are you going to manage people that have emotions while being rational with it as well? And that's, I think, I mean, Deryn will elaborate, of course, but that's when you have to, you know, you're only in charge of your own emotions and how you react to things. So once you start working on that, it does become easier as well to stay in the present without kind of reacting and stay rational. And the empathy comes with it as well, by understanding that other people have emotions but not reacting to them.
Right. So it's observing people, but not getting all hooked up into their emotional field.
Mm.
It's standing back. It's being the observer of other people. It's being the observer of yourself. We can take that position within our mind, where we're the observers rather than interacting. Because when we throw ourselves emotionally and let ourselves get emotionally hooked up into other people's shadow self and their emotions, we get all entangled in theirs. So it's important to stand back.
Yeah. One of the things you blew my mind with, and I can't say it was a welcome piece of information in my world, but since I have actually unpacked it and worked with it and now embrace it, is that difficult people are sent to us in order for us to heal that thing within ourselves. Is that right? Did I get it right?
That's absolutely.
So, if you clash with someone, it's because they're doing something which you have inside of you. Is that right?
That's right.
I think I screamed when you told me that.
Yeah, me too.
It's like, what? You mean that thing they're doing, which is driving you crazy and irritating you and making you frustrated and, like, for God's sake,
Yeah.
and giving you all this bad emotion is actually what you do.
Right.
In another way, in another life, in another form, but
Right.
it's what you do. I mean, that Deryn blew me away and made me feel a little bit nauseous. I can't lie, you
Right.
know.
So we're talking about other people's shadow selves and how it affects us. So some people won't trigger us, or they won't trigger us that much. But I mean, even if you're with your very best friend or your child for long enough, eventually their shadow will trigger you. And some people will trigger you more than others. I mean, mainly we want to run away from those people when they're like that. But the thing is to stay. The thing is to understand that that person is bringing you your greatest gift. So everyone has a shadow. There's no exceptions, and you might not see your own shadow, but I can't guarantee you that others do. It's like a blind spot. And we can see other people's, and we may know it by the definition, but we may not know that by the definition, but we might say they're not themselves today, or they're a bit off, or they're in a mood. And we all have family and friends and work colleagues, and they might be in their authentic self most days, but occasionally you'll witness them being in their shadow. We also slip in and out of our shadow all day. Stress and tiredness and hunger and illness and sadness and anger can trigger it at any given moment. But when we understand that this can be this can be more patient, so when we can be more patient and not let ourselves get triggered, it's because other people's shadow selves are contagious. So that's really important to know. When other people are in their shadow, it can trigger our shadow.
Well, because that's the whole point of the work, right, Deryn? It's to heal that within yourself.
That's right. So
That's the whole thing.
these people are a gift to us. They're not torture. So
It feels like it at the time.
other people can magically mirror our own shadow and afford you the opportunity to heal if you're present of mind. Someone might ignore you and you might feel rejected, showing that you're needing validation from others. And if you're not present at the moment, you can notice that and speak to your inner child and acknowledge their feelings of unworthiness and reassure your child and rationally explain to your inner child that other people do not validate us, that other people may be in their shadow and distracted presently. So as we said, other people's shadow is a gift and a great teacher. And instead of running from them, if you can be brave and face your shadow, you can do magnificent work there. If everyone agreed with everything that we said, we'd never grow and become more than what we are. And we want to become more than what we are.
Absolutely.
We want to reach our greatest potential. I think that's what Abraham Maslow was talking about. Most of us know about Abraham's hierarchy of needs and about self-actualization and about being the best that we can. And we can only be the best that we can when we defeat our shadow. Well, defeat's probably too much of a word, but we heal our shadow.
Yeah, healing. I prefer the healing word. Yeah. Because then those things they dissipate, they go away.
Right. And then we become.
Since I've been working with you, Deryn, I have seen this tenfold. Small things. My husband coming in after playing football, and there's all the little asphalt all over the floor. That would just send me, boom. Like, how many times I have to tell you, blah blah. Or the kids and they're untidy. I've got a house full of teenagers, untidy rooms. And now I process, why am I like that? And then I go, oh, because I learned that because my mum was like that. So does it really bother me? No, I just close the door. I get the dustpan and brush and I clean up the asphalt. I am so much calmer. And then because you don't have this explosion of emotion as soon as he walks in the door, as soon as you're on the, it's like it just goes. It just doesn't matter, and everybody's happy. And then I notice that, well, he's taking his boots off outside by himself without me saying anything because there's no reaction. And the kids' rooms are all tidy because I don't know, they're just doing it. It's like I've bent reality or something. I'm changing the way people are reacting to me.
And some of the work that's spooky was when you take your focus off something which you're focused on the negativity of, when you don't focus on it, something sort of magical, it sort of just transcends and just leaves. And I've really got no way of really
finding psychological magic.
Things do. Sorry. So we can easily identify someone's in their shadow because their body posture changes and their tone of voice becomes harder, their conversation sharper, and most importantly, by the energy and feeling they're giving off. Most people in shadow have low self-esteem and will often say things to make others feel bad because, in a way, it's a way in which they can access their self-worth quickly. When we're in our authentic self, we don't need to make others feel bad to feel good. We get our own sense of self-worth by our own appreciation for who we are. So unconsciously, we're always reading other people's body language and energy and to see where they're at. But then we're reacting unconsciously to it by the shadow. So what I'm suggesting is that whenever you meet someone, to consciously notice where they're at in their being. And I call it spidey senses. It's something I've sort of honed that phrase. Use your spidey senses. So we've got the 5 senses that we know, in sight and sound and smell and touch. But our 6th sense, if you like, is our feelings and our sense where that person's at. So before engaging with them, you can feel that. You can feel where they are. When you know where they are, you can feel, okay, they're potentially in their shadow. I sort of put up my shield and I'm not going to fall into my shadow. I'm going to notice where they're at. I'm going to be calm. I'm going to use a good voice. I'm going to focus on the positive in them. And you can actually bring people out of their shadow. But if we don't do that, we'll get triggered by our shadow and we'll engage their shadow even more. And that's how arguments start. and they just blow up because someone's in shadow, someone reacts to the shadow, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you never get anywhere. You
Really
just get more and
simple.
more and more into your shadow.
It's really simple when you put it like that. I mean, it's very clear, isn't it?
So yeah, just remain observant and detached when you meet someone, and just figure that out first of all, whereabouts they're at. You can feel it, because we have that ability. We have that ability. We have been taught that we have that ability, but we have that ability.
I've got lots of questions. So I'm conscious that we've got 10 minutes left. So I would like to, well, have a look at some of these questions, and you can answer them briefly. Is there Vicky, is there anything else you'd like to add with, as your line manager experience and this and your team and what you've noticed, what your conclusions from doing Deryn's work?
That's a big question, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry. It's just I want to read some of the
Yeah, there's a couple of really good questions in there that I can see as well. But for me, the more that people do this work, the easier it is as well. Because, a year ago when I started speaking to Deryn, I was a very new manager as well, but I think only one or two of my team or even the corporate floor were doing this work. But actually, the more that we do it and the more that we understand each other, it helps massively as well. And you can see people bringing each other out of their shadow, which is really good. But everyone does it. I think the most important thing for me is understanding that everyone does have a different shadow, and it is about not reacting to things as well. And it does, even just as a manager, it helps me have things come at me and not react to them. And for that, less things naturally come back to me. It's like you were saying earlier, it is witchcraft. It is witchcraft. Because I used to start a Monday, and I would dread a Monday. When you're like, oh, do you know what? I've had a day off. There's going to be thousands of emails in my inbox. I'm not going to be able to get this done. No, the more it sounds so simple, and I cannot profess it enough, but the more you do it, the better it is. If you go and you go, do you know what? I'm not going to have that many emails today. I'm going to get my work done because I can only do what I can do. It happens. Less emails come in. It just works. I don't know how it works, and I'm not going to push it too far, but it does just work.
We
But it
create
doesn't happen overnight.
our reality from what we believe.
Exactly, yeah. So it's about hearing those negative thoughts like, oh, I'm dreading work, and actually reversing them completely, reassuring yourself as well, reassuring the inner child, which I know we've touched on very briefly, and a couple of the questions are about kind of the inner child and the shadow as well.
Yeah, one of the questions is, how do we break the cycle of catastrophizing? Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Catastrophizing and focusing on the negative feelings. How do we stop projecting on those around us?
Okay, so let's take it one. How to stop catastrophizing? So first of all, you identify that it's imagination, because it's not a fact. You're
imagining it. Yeah.
Your shadow was always suggesting the worst possible scenario. When you reflect back on all the other times that you catastrophized, did all those things happen? So being rational about it, and also just knowing that you are imagining it. So instead of imagining the worst, why don't we imagine the best? Since if we're going to imagine, let's use the imagination in our favor and not against ourselves. So it's consciously imagining the best. Today, when I get up, this is going to be a great day. Things are going to go my way. Everything is working out for my best interest. Everything that comes to me, whether I perceive it as good or bad, I will be able to use that for my benefit and become stronger and better. Everything is a win-win. It's what we believe. This is the fundament of this work is what you believe. So what was the second and third?
How do we stop projecting on those around us?
How do we stop projecting on those around us? So it's understanding what we're projecting, first of all. So is the person online, what sort of thing do they feel that they're projecting? Can we ask that person to type? What do they feel that
Well,
they're projecting?
yeah, I don't know who, it's an anonymous attendee, so I don't know the person's name, but if it comes up, so because they have, I think it's the same person, because they've gone on. So as the shadow self is a development of us as we grow, it doesn't make a difference regarding our sexuality, gender, identity, or disabilities then, right? That's actually really cool.
Okay.
So they did go on and kind of,
So we project onto each other what we believe. So it's
Yeah.
challenging what we believe, then we won't be projecting that onto other people. So actually what we project onto other people is our own belief about ourselves. So I might if I'm calling you lazy, there's a part of me that feels lazy within my shadow.
oh, that blows my mind.
It doesn't get easier to hear, does it, Anna?
I don't like those things. How about this one from Mary? I'm in my mid-40s and it seems like I'm getting more irrational the older I get. Do people generally react to their shadows differently at different ages?
Well, we can evolve and devolve in our shadow, depending on what's happening within our life and what has happened in our life. So at any point we can step in and evolve. So maybe things have happened recently that have brought you more into your shadow. Maybe some difficult situations. I know personally myself, when I've gone through difficult situations, that's brought me back down into my shadow. But because of what I do, I've noticed that. Then I ask myself, why? What is this triggering within me? And then I will evolve back up. So it's like a ladder. You can go up and down this ladder of consciousness. People are evolving. You might see someone and suddenly they've evolved more, and suddenly you may notice some people have devolved. So it's all about their conscious state of awareness.
But you know, that's what I notice in people as they get older, they revert to child. I've seen that. They become very, you know, childish and also cantankerous. It's like all those bad things that they think all the time get condensed into one rock ball of.
Yeah, so some people go more into their shadow, but some people mellow. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But you can see it.
If you stand back, you
Mary
can.
wasn't Mary. Be aware of it. You're in your shadow as you get older, and you just got to come out of it. Just know that are you talking to the authentic person across the way from you, or are you talking to a shadow, a mirror? And when you have that thought,
If you're becoming more rational, you're buying more into your shadow self. So you just question your imagination. Another great thing is question whether it's a thought or whether it's your imagination, because we're taught we're thinking. But I challenge that, because the child within us was in imagination. And so when we're in our shadow, a lot of the stuff is imagined. So if I present that to clients, I say, go away and question how much you think you're actually thinking and that it's a fact, how much you're actually imagining. Once we start challenging that concept, that alone in itself starts changing our reality of who we are.
Yeah. Lexi put in the chat, that change on how to view catastrophizing as imagine the best instead has just blown my mind. And I'm so excited to try and use that. All I can tell you, Lexi, is it works. I don't know how it works. And Vicky will tell you I don't know how it works, but the less energy you give to the negative stuff, the more it dissipates and goes away. And I don't know, I just feel so much happier. I'm just so happy. I feel happy.
It's your birthday
now. Pardon, Deryn?
And it's your birthday.
Okay. But we've got 1 minute, and I mean we could go on and probably talk for hours and hours and hours and hours. Oh, thank you. I just got a happy birthday in the chat. We could go and talk for hours and hours and hours on this, and there'll be a short survey afterwards. Who would like to know more? We will create a resource page, and we will be sharing the recording and some links and stuff like this in the resource page about Deryn's work. So we are curious to know if you want to have another webinar, you want to learn more about her work, you want to engage her services through Microlink. we're happy to send that out. And I think unfortunately I can't get to all the questions. Please forgive me. I will give these questions to Deryn afterwards, and hopefully she'll be able to answer those questions, because there's nothing personal there. So you can answer them generically or whatever, Deryn. But I think we just need a short summary from you on the last. Oh, we are actually 3 o'clock, but
We have time. Okay.
yeah,
So,
just
very
1
briefly,
minute.
is I believe the work at Microlink is groundbreaking and pioneering. Collectively, we need to raise our game and to help the worldwide devolution in mental health by evolving in consciousness to more than that we've ever been as a race. The problem identified in the shadow self within each of us and how we will react to the shadow self in ourselves. The shadow self is contagious as a virus and should be treated as such. When we react to the shadow in others, we fall into our own shadow, which then triggers a downward spiral in our mental health. When we can accept that there's light and dark or opposites in everything, then we can accept that that must be true of ourselves as well. We have day and night, black and white, bass and tenor, roses and weeds, impressionist and surrealistic art, opera and death metal. As within, so without, they say. And with that, we reflect into the world what we are within, and the world reflects back to us who we are as a species. The world is reflecting our inner consciousness, and so do the people that we engage with. It's our job now to do the work of realizing this and raising our consciousness further than we have taken it before, or we will collapse under a pandemic of mental health. And we are creating the future for our children, and we are the gatekeepers of the future for our race. We need to understand that we can become more than what we have been. We're at a crucial point in our evolution, and it's all of our duty to do what we can individually to help each other rise up. Appear to be on the brink of a new age, and it is through our consciousness of who we choose to be that is pushing us forward. Let us then take heart, look within and heal ourselves. As we pick up this mantle, we will help all those around us and the future generations. As Neil Armstrong once said, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Amazing, Deryn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been really good. We've gone 2 minutes over time, and I'm really sorry about that. Recording will be sent out, and I will give these questions to Deryn, and she will answer them as best as we can. Although some of them were anonymous, but
Thank you so much.
yeah, that was fun. Anyway, thank you very much. I'm going off to now have a cupcake and a cup of tea with my daughter in the kitchen because it's my birthday. Oh, okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Deryn.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye.